A-Train spent 4 seasons running from what he did to Robin in the first episode of the show, and then in the first episode of the final season, he died doing the same exact thing, except this time he swerved. He chose the person in the road over his own survival, and Homelander snapped his neck for it. That moment is everything the boys can be when it's firing on all cylinders. Full circle, earned, devastating without being gratuitous. But earlier in the same episode, the Flight 37 video, the video that the entire finale of the second season was built around, gets dismissed as AI generated. Bot's share prices drops like half a point, and I felt something sink in my chest that had nothing to do with grief. So let's talk about the boys. The final season has started, and I have some thoughts. I first watched the boys in late 2019. Season 1 had already aired. I came to it a bit late, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't think much of it. It was fun, it was provocative, it was something different, but it didn't grab me the way certain shows grab you. Then season 2 came out in 2020 and something clicked. I was genuinely invested week to week in a way I hadn't been with a show in a while. The escalation felt earned. Stormfront, Butcher's arc, the season 2 finale where Homelander lets everyone walk because that video exists and he cannot afford for it to get out. That finale worked precisely because it felt like consequence. The boys actually had found leverage over someone who seemed untouchable. And season 3 was the peak. Soldier Boy, Herogasm, the whole escalating chaos of that season. It felt like the show was building towards something. Like all the pieces were being moved into a position for a finale that was genuinely going to mean something. And then season 4 came out. It was fine, I watched it, I got invested during it. The season ended and I moved on. And that's when I started to notice the pattern. Every season of The Boys puts you in a loop. The show comes out, you get drawn in, it ends, you move on, you get excited for the next one, and somewhere between season 2 and now, the loop started feeling like the point rather than the journey. Let me tell you what happened in my head when the Flight 37 video started playing in episode 1. My immediate thought before Sage even opened her mouth was, Homelander is just gonna say it's AI because that's how this show works now. A win gets set up, Homelander says something publicly and it evaporates. Every single time. And then Homelander called it AI generated and I wasn't surprised. I was just tired. Not because the show surprised me, but because it didn't even try to. And here's why this matters more than it might seem. The entire dramatic engine of season 2 was that video. Homelander let Butcher and the boys walk at the end of that season despite having every reason and ability to kill them because that video existed and he couldn't risk it getting out. That was the leverage. That was the show saying, here's the one thing that can hurt him. Public proof of what he really is. 5 years later, the show dismisses it in about 90 seconds by having Sage call it AI. Watch share price drop half a point. I understand what the show is doing. It's a direct commentary on the world we live in, where genuine video evidence gets dismissed as deep fake and powerful people walk away untouched. That's a real thing that happens. And The Boys has always been a show that holds a mirror to power and then asks you to feel sick about what you see. But here's the problem. When you use real world mechanics to retroactively deflate your own storytelling, you're not just making a point about the world, you're also undermining your own narrative. If Maeve had released that video at the end of season 2, Homelander could have just called it AI then too, which means the entire tension of that finale was built on a foundation that the show now admits was hollow. Maybe the video does have some consequence later in the season. Maybe Maeve comes forward as a living witness, someone who is actually on that flight and changes the equation in a way that can't be dismissed as AI. I really hope so, because right now it feels like the show copped out its own ending. I want to make a distinction here because I think it's important. Boys is not a bad show. It is genuinely one of the most entertaining things on television. The show's production values are extraordinary. Anthony Starr's Homelander is one of the greatest villain performances in the history of the medium. The dark comedy lands more often than it misses, and these first 2 episodes of season 5 are the strongest premiere the show has ever had in my opinion. But there's a difference between a show that entertains you and a show that stays with you. Every season of The Boys has a rhythm to it. Something shocking happens, the boys try to capitalize on it, Homelander or Watt or the government neutralizes it, the world moves on, another shocking thing happens, repeat. Each individual moment of shock is well executed, because when the shock becomes the structural logic of the show, when you can feel the writers asking, what's the most disturbing thing we can do here, rather than what does the character need to do here, the cumulative effect starts feeling like diminishing returns. Compare that to Invincible. I know I already made this argument in my previous video and I stand by every word of it. Invincible makes you love these characters before it destroys them. The Boys keeps you at a deliberate arm's length from its characters, and I think that's partly intentional. It's a cynical show about a cynical world. It doesn't want you getting too comfortable, but the consequence is that when a characters die or suffer, your first reaction is often aesthetic appreciation of the craft rather than genuine grief. A-Train was the exception, and the reason A-Train worked was precisely because his arc had real moral weight. He started the show by killing an innocent woman and spending years pretending it didn't happen. He ended it by swerving for once. That's not shock, that's storytelling. I want more of that and less of whatever the Deep's Andrew Tate podcast is supposed to be doing for the narrative. And here's the question I keep coming back to. Breaking Bad came out almost 20 years ago. We still talk about it, we still rewatch it, we still reference it as the benchmark for television storytelling. And the reason for that is that Breaking Bad feels timeless. It's not a show about a specific cultural moment. It's a show about a specific human truth. The transformation of a good man into a monster through the specific alchemy of pride and desperation. That story doesn't age. The Boys is a show about right now. Every season looks at what the world is doing in that specific window and reflects it back. AI, Sigma male podcasts, political violence, the media's relationship with power, and it does it brilliantly. But I worry that in 10 years, watching The Boys is going to feel like reading a very well-written newspaper from 2024. Accurate, sharp, but dated in a way that it feels like a document of a moment rather than a story for all time. That's not an indictment of the show. Some of the greatest art ever made is deeply of its moment, but I think The Boys had potential in its first 2 seasons to be something more than that. And I think somewhere around season 3 it made a choice, consciously or not, to be the greatest show about right now rather than a great show about forever. I find that genuinely sad because when I watch the first season back, I see a show that could have been Breaking Bad for the superhero age, and I'm not sure the final season is going to change that. Now let's talk about what season 5 needs to do. Homelander needs to be hurt in a way that he hasn't been hurt before. Not just tactically, not just politically, he needs to feel something that his power cannot protect him. And I think they're already laying the groundwork for that, with him feeling like no one respects him and everyone fears him, along with Sage warning him that no matter how much power he has, it'll never be enough. I feel like that's what's going to lead to his downfall. Soldier Boy, if he's still alive, is actually the most interesting threat right now because it's the one place where Homelander's need for love and approval is genuinely exposed. He doesn't want a weapon, he wants a father, and Soldier Boy couldn't care less about him. That gap between what Homelander's needs emotionally and what he actually is where the most interesting version of his ending lives. The virus storyline has been building up for too long for it to be a clean solution. My gut says that it works on regular soups, but it hits a wall against Soldier Boy and Homelander specifically, which forces the show towards something more personal and more costly for these main characters. But let's see. What I need from the ending, and I say this clearly, that it needs to feel like a proper conclusion. The Boys needs to feel finished. The characters need to land somewhere that has weight, not a cliffhanger, not a tease, an ending. Whether they pull that off, we'll find out over the next 6 weeks. Final season of one of the most culturally significant shows of the last decade. I want it to be great. I want Homelander's ending to be the kind that people talk about for years. I want Butcher to get a conclusion that actually means something. I want the show to prove me wrong about the shock over substance argument and end with something that feels genuinely earned. The first 2 episodes gave me A-Train's death, which was exactly that. Give me a couple more moments like that and I'll eat every word of what I just said happily. Thank you for watching.